Hey everyone, welcome to Serial Soul. I hope you're all doing well. Today I want to argue that Interstellar is not really a film about space travel. It is a philosophical argument that love is the one force in the universe that transcends the laws of physics, and that our relationship with time is ultimately defined not by clocks or gravity, but by the people we refuse to let go of. Through Einstein's relativity, existentialist philosophy, and one father's refusal to abandon his daughter, Christopher Nolan built the most emotionally devastating case for human connection ever put on screen. And over the next few hours, I'm going to break down every hidden layer of meaning in this film, from the real science that a Nobel Prize-winning physicist built into the story, to the poem that secretly belongs to the villains, to the reason why a ticking watch on a bookshelf is the most important object in the entire movie. But before we begin, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free, and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Anyway, that's enough. Let's begin. Section 1. A world that forgot how to look up. There is something deeply unsettling about the opening minutes of Interstellar that has nothing to do with space. There are no rockets, no black holes, no wormholes. Instead, the film opens with something much more disturbing. It opens with old people sitting in chairs talking about dust. These are real interviews. Christopher Nolan took actual footage of real Dust Bowl survivors from Ken Burns' 2012 documentary called The Dust Bowl, and placed them at the beginning of his science fiction film. Real people, real memories, real pain. And by doing this, Nolan is telling you something before the movie even begins. He is telling you that the world he is about to show you is not fantasy. It is a warning. The Earth of Interstellar is not dying in some dramatic, explosive Hollywood way. There are no asteroids heading toward the planet. There are no nuclear wars. There is no alien invasion. Instead, the Earth is dying slowly, quietly, and almost politely. Crops are failing. First wheat went extinct, then okra. By the time the film starts, corn is the last crop left on the entire planet, and it is starting to fail too. A disease called the blight is moving through every plant species one by one, killing them off, and nobody can stop it. The air is filling with dust. Massive dust storms roll across the land, covering everything, getting into homes, into lungs, into food. People are not starving yet, but they can see it coming. The end is not sudden. It is patient. And somehow, that makes it worse. What makes this opening so powerful is what it says about the people living through it. This is not a world full of panic. Nobody is rioting. Nobody is screaming about the end of the world. Instead, people have done something far more frightening. They have accepted it. They have lowered their expectations. They have decided that this is just the way things are now, and the best they can do is grow as much corn as possible and keep their heads down. The world of Interstellar is not a world that has been destroyed. It is a world that has given up. And nowhere is this more clear than in the parent-teacher conference scene. Cooper, played by Matthew McConaughey, sits down with his daughter Murph's teachers, and what they tell him is one of the most chilling moments in the entire film. The teachers explain that the school textbooks have been rewritten. The new versions of these textbooks now teach students that the Apollo moon landings never happened. According to the school, the moon landings were faked. They were propaganda designed to trick the Soviet Union into spending money on space technology until their economy collapsed. The teachers say this with complete confidence. They believe it. The system believes it, and they are teaching it to children as fact. Now think about what that means. This is a society that looked at one of the greatest achievements in human history, the moment when human beings left the Earth and walked on another world for the first time, and they decided to erase it. Not because they hate space, not because they have evidence it was faked, but because they no longer see the point. Why would you teach children about going to the moon when you need them to become farmers? Why would you inspire them to look upward when everything that matters is in the soil beneath their feet? The school system in Interstellar has made a deliberate choice. It has decided that dreams are dangerous and that ambition is wasteful. The only thing that matters now is survival. Cooper is furious when he hears this, and the line he delivers captures the entire philosophy of the opening act in one sentence. He says that they used to look up at the sky and wonder at their place in the stars, and now they just look down and worry about their place in the dirt. That line is the heart of everything Nolan is trying to say about this version of Earth. It is a world that has stopped looking up. It has stopped asking questions. It has stopped reaching for anything beyond what is right in front of it. And Nolan is not just talking about a fictional future. He is making a broader point about what happens to any society that decides curiosity is a luxury it cannot afford. Cooper himself is a walking example of this tragedy. He is a former NASA test pilot. He was trained to fly spacecraft. He was one of the best pilots on the planet. And now he drives a tractor. He grows corn. He fixes farming equipment. He is a man built for the sky, who has been chained to the ground. And you can feel it every time he looks at the horizon with that quiet frustration in his eyes. The world did not just take away his career. It took away his purpose. It took away the thing that made him feel alive, and it replaced it with something useful but meaningless to him. Cooper is surviving, but he is not living. There is a massive difference between those two things, and Interstellar understands that difference better than almost any film ever made. This is reflected in how the rest of the community thinks, too. When Cooper's son, Tom, brings home his school assessment, the teachers tell Cooper that Tom is going to be a farmer. Not because Tom chose it, not because Tom is passionate about agriculture, but because that is what the world needs right now, and there is no room for anything else. Cooper pushes back. He wants more for his son. But the system does not care what Cooper wants. The system needs farmers, not pilots, not engineers, not scientists. The world has become so focused on keeping people alive today that it has completely stopped thinking about tomorrow. And this is where the film starts making its first real philosophical argument. Interstellar is saying that survival alone is not enough. Keeping people fed and breathing is important, obviously. Nobody would argue against that. But if that is all you do, if your entire civilization is focused only on not dying, then you have already lost something essential about what makes you human. Humans are not just animals that eat and sleep and reproduce. Humans are the species that looked at the moon and said, "I want to go there." Humans are the species that built telescopes and painted cave walls and asked questions about stars they would never be able to touch. Curiosity, wonder, the desire to understand things that do not directly help you survive. These are not weaknesses. They are the things that separate us from every other living creature on this planet. And the world of Interstellar has thrown all of that away. Cooper's father-in-law, Donald, represents this mindset perfectly. Donald is a good man. He loves his family. He works hard. But he has fully accepted the new world. At one point, sitting on the front porch, he talks about how when he was young, it seemed like every day brought some new invention or discovery. But he says it without longing. He says it like someone describing the weather from a long time ago. It happened, it was nice, and now it is over. Donald is not angry about what the world has become. He has made his peace with it. And that peaceful acceptance is exactly what Nolan wants you to find terrifying. Because Donald is not a bad person. He is just a person who has stopped believing that things can get better. And when an entire world full of Donalds stops believing things can get better, nothing ever does. There is also a deeper layer to all of this that connects to something very real. The way Interstellar's Earth treats science and exploration mirrors patterns we can see in actual history. Societies that turn inward, that stop investing in discovery, that start viewing knowledge as either threatening or pointless, these societies stagnate. They do not collapse overnight. They just slowly stop growing. They stop solving new problems. They stop preparing for the future. And then, when a crisis comes that requires innovation and boldness, they do not have the tools or the mindset to respond. The blight in Interstellar is killing the crops. But the real disease is the one that killed humanity's ambition long before the first plant started dying. Cooper understands this on some level, even if he cannot fix it alone. He builds a drone-catching device with his kids, showing them that engineering and science still matter. He challenges the teachers at the school. He refuses to tell Murph that her curiosity is something she should be ashamed of. In a world that punishes people for thinking beyond the next harvest, Cooper quietly keeps the flame of exploration alive in his own home. He may not be able to change the whole world, but he can make sure his children know there is more to life than corn. And that is what makes the early scenes of Interstellar so effective. Before a single rocket launches, before anyone even mentions a black hole, the film has already laid out its central conflict. It is not humans against nature. It is not humans against aliens. It is humans against their own willingness to give up. The blight is destroying the food supply, yes. But the real fight is against the voice in the back of every character's mind that says this is just how things are, and there is nothing we can do about it. That voice is comfortable. That voice feels reasonable. And that voice, if you listen to it long enough, will kill you. Christopher Nolan has said in interviews that when you take an audience as far away from human experience as possible, you end up focusing very tightly on human nature and how we are connected to each other. And that is exactly what these opening scenes accomplish. By showing us an Earth that has given up, Nolan is asking a question that goes far beyond the plot of the movie. He is asking what we owe to the future. Do we have a responsibility to do more than just survive? Do we owe it to the generations that come after us to keep reaching, keep asking, keep pushing into the unknown? Even when it is scary, even when it is expensive, even when we are not sure it will work. Interstellar's answer from its very first frame is yes. Absolutely yes. And the cost of saying no is losing everything that makes us worth saving in the first place. The world of Interstellar did not die because of the blight. It started dying the moment it stopped looking up. It started dying when it rewrote the textbooks. It started dying when it told its children that the moon landing was a lie, and that their highest purpose in life was to grow food and keep quiet. The blight just finished the job. But Cooper is not someone who can keep quiet for long. And when a strange pattern of dust appears on his daughter's bedroom floor, forming lines that look an awful lot like coordinates, he is going to follow them. Because that is what people who still believe in something bigger than survival do. They follow the mystery. They chase the unknown. They look up. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And what he finds at the end of those coordinates is going to change everything. Because those lines on the floor are not random. They are a message. And the story of who sent that message and why begins in the most important room in the entire film. Section 2. The Ghost in the Bookshelf. How one room contains the entire film. Every great story has a location that matters more than any other. In The Lord of the Rings, it is the mountain where the ring must be destroyed. In The Wizard of Oz, it is the road made of yellow brick. In Interstellar, a film that takes you across galaxies and through black holes and into dimensions that most human minds cannot even picture, the most important location in the entire story is a little girl's bedroom. Specifically, it is the bookshelf in that bedroom. Everything in this film, every launch, every sacrifice, every tear, every moment of wonder, every second of heartbreak, all of it begins and ends at that bookshelf. And when you realize why, it changes the way you see the entire movie. When we first meet Murph, she is a young girl, probably around 10 years old, and she has a problem. Things keep falling off her bookshelf. Books slide off the edge and land on the floor for no apparent reason. It is not an earthquake. It is not the wind. The books just fall, sometimes on their own, sometimes in what seems like a pattern. Murph, being the kind of kid who asks questions about everything, has come to a conclusion. She believes there is a ghost in her room. She does not say this to be funny or to get attention. She genuinely believes that something is trying to communicate with her through her bookshelf, and she wants to understand what it is saying. Now, most parents would pat their child on the head, tell them there is no such thing as ghosts, and move on. And in a way, Cooper does push back on the idea. He does not believe in ghosts. He is a man of science, a former NASA pilot, someone who thinks in terms of engineering and physics and things you can measure. But he does something that most parents in his position might not do. He does not dismiss Murph. He does not tell her she is being silly. Instead, he tells her to be scientific about it. He tells her to observe the phenomenon, gather data, and try to figure out what is really going on. If something is making books fall off a shelf, then there must be a reason for it. And a good scientist does not ignore something just because they cannot explain it yet. This small moment between Cooper and Murph is one of the most important scenes in the entire film, and it is easy to miss because it seems so simple. Cooper is teaching his daughter how to think. He is not giving her answers, he is giving her a method. He is saying that the universe is full of things we do not understand, and the correct response to that is not to be afraid or to make up stories, but to pay attention and figure it out. This is the same philosophy that the rest of the world has abandoned. The schools are rewriting textbooks. The teachers are telling kids to become farmers. The entire planet has decided that the unknown is something to avoid. But Cooper, in this one bedroom, is keeping curiosity alive by showing his daughter that mysteries are not things to run from. They are things to chase. And then the film gives us the moment that sets the entire plot in motion. A dust storm hits the farmhouse. After it passes, Cooper and Murph go back to a room and find something strange. The dust that has blown in through the window has not settled randomly on the floor. It has fallen in thick and thin lines, creating a clear pattern. Cooper stares at it and realizes the lines are not random at all. They are binary code, ones and zeros. And when he translates them, they form a set of geographic coordinates, a location, somewhere specific, somewhere he can drive to. This is one of the cleverest pieces of storytelling in the entire film, because of what Nolan is doing on two levels at once. On the surface, it is a mystery. Something is sending Cooper a message through gravity, and he needs to find out what it is. But on a deeper level, Nolan is showing you the answer to the entire movie in the first act, and you do not even realize it. The dust is falling in a pattern because something is manipulating gravity in that room, and that something, as we will learn much later, is Cooper himself, reaching back through time from inside a higher dimension, desperately trying to communicate with his daughter. The ghost is real. The ghost is him. But we do not know that yet. All we know is that there are coordinates on the floor, and Cooper is not the kind of man who can ignore coordinates. He follows them. He drives through the night with Murph, who is secretly hidden in the back of his truck, because she is just as curious as he is, and they arrive at a heavily guarded facility hidden behind fences and security gates. It turns out to be a secret NASA base. NASA still exists. It has just gone underground. After the government decided that spending money on space exploration was a waste when people were starving, NASA was officially shut down. But a small group of scientists and engineers kept working in secret, funded quietly, because they understood something that the rest of the world had forgotten. Earth was dying, and the only way out was up. Inside that base, Cooper meets Professor Brand, played by Michael Caine, and his daughter Amelia Brand, played by Anne Hathaway. And they tell him the truth. The blight is not just going to kill the crops. Eventually, it is going to consume the oxygen in the atmosphere. It is not just food that is running out. It is air. The human race does not have generations left. It has decades, maybe less. And NASA has a plan, but they need a pilot. They need someone who can fly a ship through a wormhole that has mysteriously appeared near Saturn, travel to another galaxy, and find a new planet where humanity can live. And Cooper, a former NASA test pilot, who just happened to follow a set of impossible coordinates straight to their front door, is exactly the person they need. But here is the thing that makes this sequence so much richer than a simple plot setup. Think about what just happened. A gravitational anomaly in a little girl's bedroom sent a man to the one place on Earth that could give him a mission to save the human race. That is not a coincidence. That is a message. Something wanted Cooper to find NASA. Something reached through gravity and dust and binary code to put him in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. And the question of who sent that message and why is the engine that drives the entire rest of the film. Murph's bedroom is filled with books, hundreds of them. They line the shelves from floor to ceiling, covering an entire wall. And this is not an accident either. The production team behind Interstellar made very specific choices about the design of that room, and the books are there for a reason that goes beyond set decoration. Books are one of the oldest and most powerful forms of human connection across time. When you read a book written by someone who died 100 years ago, you are receiving their thoughts, their ideas, their voice, across a gap of time that should make communication impossible. A parent reads a book to a child, and for a moment, they are sharing the same words, the same world, the same experience. Books are how knowledge survives when the people who created it do not. They are bridges between generations. And in a film that is entirely about reaching across impossible distances to connect with the people you love, filling Murph's room with books is one of the most meaningful visual choices Nolan could have made. Paul Franklin, the visual effects supervisor on Interstellar, has talked about why the bookshelf was chosen as the centerpiece of the Tesseract later in the film. He explained that books are one of the most common ways people can connect with their relatives who are no longer around. A grandfather writes in a book, and decades later, a grandchild reads those words and feels a connection to someone they may never have met. The bookshelf is not just a piece of furniture. It is a symbol of everything the film is about. It is a bridge across time, a place where the past and the future meet, and a physical object that can carry meaning far beyond what its builders intended. And this is what makes Murph such a compelling character from the very beginning. She does not just notice that things are falling off her shelf. She cares about it. She wants to understand it. She keeps a record of which books fall and when. She tries to find the pattern. When her father tells her to be scientific about it, she takes him seriously. She is 10 years old, and she is already doing what the rest of the world has stopped doing. She is paying attention to something she does not understand, and she is refusing to look away until she figures it out. Murph is named after Murphy's Law, which says that anything that can happen will happen. Cooper tells her this, and she initially takes it the wrong way, thinking it means she is named after something bad. But Cooper explains that Murphy's Law does not mean something bad will happen. It just means that whatever is possible will eventually occur. And this idea is woven into the fabric of the entire film. If it is possible for a father to reach his daughter across time and space, then it will happen. If it is possible for love to find a way through the laws of physics, then it will find a way. Murphy's Law is not pessimistic. It is a statement about the stubbornness of possibility. And Murph, the character, embodies that stubbornness more than anyone else in the story. When Cooper decides to accept the mission and leave Earth, the scene that follows is one of the most emotionally devastating moments in the film. He has to say goodbye to his children, Tom, his son, is hurt, but seems to accept it. But Murph will not even look at him. She is furious. She feels abandoned. She begs him not to go, and when he goes anyway, she refuses to say goodbye. Cooper drives away in tears, and the last thing we see is Murph running out of the house after his truck, screaming for him to come back. He does not stop. This moment matters because it sets up every single thing that follows. Cooper's entire motivation for the rest of the film is not saving the human race. It is getting back to Murph. Every decision he makes, every risk he takes, every sacrifice he endures is driven by the promise he made to his daughter. He told her he would come back, and she is going to hold him to that promise for the rest of her life, even when she is angry at him, even when she thinks he lied, even when decades pass and she becomes an adult and he is still somewhere out among the stars. And the bookshelf is going to be there through all of it. When Murph grows up and becomes a physicist working alongside Professor Brand, she still has that bookshelf. She still has those books. She still has the watch her father gave her before he left, sitting right there on the shelf, keeping time, waiting for a message that she does not yet know is coming. That bedroom is the beginning and the end. It is where the ghost first appeared, and where the ghost will finally be explained. It is where a father taught his daughter to be curious, and where that curiosity will eventually save the entire human race. It is where books fell from a shelf for no reason, and where, hours later from Cooper's perspective, and decades later from Murph's, those falling books will finally make sense. Every galaxy Cooper crosses, every wave that nearly kills him, every year he loses to the bending of time, all of it leads back to this one room, this one shelf, this one relationship between a man and his daughter. Nolan has said that when they were designing the Tesseract sequence later in the film, they explored several concepts, including an infinite matrix stretching in every direction. But they ultimately decided to make it intimate. They decided to center it on this bedroom. Because no matter how big the universe is, the story they were telling was not really about space. It was about the infinity of possibilities within one child's room. The whole film lives and dies in that bedroom. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Cooper follows the coordinates and finds NASA. He meets the Brands. He learns about the wormhole and the dying Earth and the mission that might save everyone. But he also learns something else, something he will not fully understand until much later. Professor Brand has a plan, and he has a secret. And that secret is going to change everything Cooper thinks he knows about why he was sent into space in the first place. Section 3. Professor Brand's noble lie. The ethics of deception for the greater good. Professor Brand is one of the most interesting characters in Interstellar, because for most of the film, you think he is a hero. He is played by Michael Caine, which already makes you trust him, because Michael Caine has one of those faces that just feels safe and wise. Brand is an old man, a brilliant physicist, the head of what remains of NASA, and the person who has dedicated his entire life to saving the human race. He quotes poetry. He mentors young scientists. He welcomes Cooper into the mission with warmth and sincerity. He is, by every appearance, a good man, doing good work under impossible circumstances. And that is exactly why his lie is so devastating when it finally comes out. To understand what Professor Brand did, you first need to understand the two plans. When Cooper arrives at the secret NASA base, Brand explains that they have two options for saving humanity. Plan A is the hopeful one. The idea behind Plan A is that Brand has been working on a gravity equation for years. If he can solve this equation, it would allow them to figure out how to manipulate gravity itself. And if they can do that, they can build massive space stations, load them with the entire population of Earth, and launch them off the planet. Everyone gets saved. Nobody gets left behind. To make Plan A work, though, They need to find a habitable planet on the other side of the wormhole, somewhere for those space stations to go. That is why they need Cooper. They need him to fly through the wormhole, check out the planets that previous explorers have scouted, and report back on which one can support human life. Plan B is the backup. If Plan A fails, the Endurance ship is carrying a vault of over 5,000 frozen human embryos. These embryos can be taken to a habitable planet and grown into a new human population. A fresh start for the species. It sounds reasonable on paper. But think about what Plan B actually means. It means everyone on Earth dies. Every man, woman, and child currently alive is left behind to slowly suffocate as the blight eats through the remaining crops and consumes the oxygen in the atmosphere. Plan B saves the human species, but it does not save any actual humans. It saves an idea of humanity while letting all the real people perish. When Brand explains these two plans to Cooper, he presents them as equally possible. Plan A is what they are working toward. Plan B is there just in case. Cooper agrees to the mission largely because of Plan A. He is not going into space to help start some colony with frozen embryos on a distant world. He is going because he believes that if he does his part, Brand will solve the gravity equation, and Cooper will be able to come home to his children. That is the deal. That is what Cooper is signing up for. Fly to another galaxy, find a planet, and come home to Murph and Tom, while Brand figures out how to get everyone off Earth. Except that is not the deal at all, because Professor Brand has been lying. Brand solved his gravity equation years ago, or rather, he solved it as far as it could be solved. He hit a wall. The equation was incomplete. To finish it, he needed one piece of information that he believed was impossible to get. He needed data from inside the singularity of a black hole. A singularity is the very center of a black hole, the point where all the mass is crushed into an infinitely small space. The laws of physics, as we understand them, break down at the singularity, and in Brand's view, no one could ever get close enough to observe a singularity and send information back, because anything that crosses into a black hole cannot escape. The data he needed was locked behind a door that could never be opened. So Brand had a choice. He could tell the truth. He could announce to everyone at NASA, to Cooper, to his own daughter, that Plan A was impossible. That no matter how hard they worked on the equation, it would never be completed. That the only real option was Plan B, which meant abandoning everyone on Earth to die. Or he could lie. He could keep pretending that Plan A was still on the table, that he was still working on the equation, that there was still hope for the people of Earth. And that lie would serve a very specific purpose. It would keep people motivated. It would give NASA funding and purpose. It would convince brilliant people like Cooper to risk their lives on the mission. Because Brand understood something very important about human nature. Nobody is going to volunteer to fly across the galaxy to start a colony of frozen embryos if they know their own family is going to die while they are gone. People need hope. They need to believe that their sacrifice has a chance of saving the people they love. Take that hope away, and the mission falls apart. Brand chose the lie. For years, he kept it going. He sat with Murph, who had grown up to become a physicist and had started working alongside him at NASA. He let her believe they were making progress on the equation together. He watched her pour her intelligence and her energy into solving a problem that he already knew could not be solved with the information they had. He did this day after day, year after year, knowing the truth and saying nothing. And the weight of that lie is almost impossible to fully appreciate until you think about what it cost the people around him. Cooper left his children because he believed Plan A would bring him home. Murph lost her father because she believed the mission would eventually save everyone on Earth. The scientists and engineers at NASA dedicated their lives to a project they believed in, and all of it was built on a foundation that Professor Brand knew was hollow. He did not just lie to strangers. He lied to the people who trusted him the most. He lied to his own daughter, Amelia, who was aboard the Endurance, risking her life in another galaxy. He lied to Murph, who had essentially become his second daughter. He lied to Cooper, who had given up everything he loved, because Brand looked him in the eye and gave him a reason to believe it was worth it. The question the film is asking through all of this is one of the oldest questions in philosophy. Is it ever acceptable to lie for the greater good? If the lie keeps people working, keeps them hopeful, keeps the mission alive, is it justified? Professor Brand clearly thought so. In his mind, the survival of the human species was more important than the feelings of any individual person. If lying to Cooper got Cooper on that ship, and getting Cooper on that ship meant humanity had a chance of surviving through Plan B, then the lie was worth it. The math was simple. One man's broken heart versus the entire future of the human race. Brand did what he thought he had to do. But the film does not let Brand off that easily, because there is a difference between a lie that serves others and a lie that protects the liar. Brand was not just keeping hope alive for the sake of the mission. He was also protecting himself from having to face the people around him with the truth. He was shielding himself from the look in Murph's eyes if she ever found out. He was avoiding the confrontation, the anger, the grief, the feeling of watching everyone around you realize that the thing they believed in was empty. Brand dressed his cowardice up as strategy. He told himself it was for the greater good, but at least part of it was simply because telling the truth was too painful and too hard. And then he dies. On his deathbed, with Murph sitting beside him, Professor Brand finally confesses. He tells her the truth. Plan A was never going to work. The equation cannot be solved without data from a singularity. He has known this for years. Everything they worked on together was built on a lie. And the way he tells her is almost cruel in its simplicity. He does not give a long explanation. He does not apologize with the kind of weight that years of deception deserve. He simply admits it, reciting the Dylan Thomas poem one last time as he goes. And then he is gone, leaving Murph to deal with the wreckage of everything she believed in. Murph's reaction is devastating. She does not quietly accept it. She does not shrug it off. She is destroyed by it. And her anger does not just aim at Professor Brand. It reaches all the way across space to Cooper. In a message she sends to the Endurance, Murph accuses her father of knowing about the lie. She believes Cooper knew Plan A was fake when he left, and that he abandoned his family anyway, choosing the mission over them, knowing full well he was never going to be able to save them. This is not what happened. Cooper did not know. He was lied to just like everyone else. But Murph has no way of knowing that, and the pain of what she is feeling is too enormous for reason to get through. In her eyes, the two men she trusted most in the world both betrayed her. Brand lied to her face, and her father left her to die. What makes this moment so powerful is how it ripples through the rest of the film. When the crew of the Endurance receives Murph's message and learns the truth about Plan A, it changes everything. Amelia Brand discovers that her own father deceived her. Cooper realizes that the promise he made to Murph, the promise to come home and save everyone, was based on a lie he did not know about. The entire emotional foundation of the mission cracks, and in the silence that follows, every character has to decide what they are going to do now that hope has been stripped away. Later in the film, Dr. Mann offers what might be the most honest assessment of Professor Brand's character. He tells Cooper that the professor was prepared to destroy his own humanity in order to save the species. Mann says this almost with admiration, as if Brand's willingness to sacrifice his personal morality for the bigger picture is something to respect. But the film does not frame it that way. Interstellar is very clear that Brand's willingness to throw away his humanity is not heroic. It is tragic. It is the mark of a man who lost something essential about himself in pursuit of a goal that he believed justified any cost. And that is a dangerous way to think, because once you decide that the ends justify the means, there is no limit to what you can justify. The most important thing about Professor Brand's lie is not the lie itself. It is what happens after the lie is exposed. And this is where the film makes its sharpest distinction. When Murph discovers the truth, she has a choice. She can give up, just like Brand did. She can accept that the equation cannot be solved, and that everyone on Earth is going to die. Or she can do what Brand could not. She can keep trying. And that is exactly what she does. Murph does not stop working on the equation, even though she knows it is supposed to be impossible. Even though the man she trusted most told her it could not be done. She refuses to accept it. She keeps looking for an answer. When Murph's partner Getty realizes that she is hiding the truth about Plan A from the public, he accuses her of being just like Professor Brand. And Murph's response is the single most important line in her entire arc. She says that Brand gave up on them, but she is still trying to solve it. That one sentence separates Murph from every other character who has faced the truth about Plan A. Brand gave up. Man gave up. The world gave up. Murph did not. She took the lie. She absorbed the pain of it, and she turned it into fuel. She decided that just because one brilliant man said something was impossible did not make it so. And in the end, she is proven right. The data does come. The equation does get solved. And it is Murph, not Brand, not Cooper, not anyone else, who uses that information to save the human race. Professor Brand's lie is one of the most layered moral situations in modern film, because there is no clean answer. Was he wrong to lie? Almost certainly. Did the lie serve a purpose? Without question. Would the mission have happened without it? Probably not. Did it cause enormous pain to the people he loved? Absolutely. Interstellar does not tell you how to feel about Professor Brand. It simply shows you what he did, shows you what it cost, and lets you sit with the discomfort of a good man who did a terrible thing for a reason he believed was good enough. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And Brand is not the only person in this film hiding behind the idea that they are acting for the greater good. On an ice planet on the other side of the galaxy, another man has been waiting for years, alone, with a secret of his own. And his secret is even darker than anything Professor Brand could have imagined. Section 4. Dr. Man and the Philosophy of Cowardice. Before anyone in the film ever meets Dr. Man, they already worship him. That is not an exaggeration. The way the other characters talk about this man, you would think he was a saint. Amelia Brand calls him remarkable. She calls him the best of us. Professor Brand considered him his finest student, his protégé, the person he trusted more than anyone else to lead the most dangerous mission in human history. When the Lazarus missions were first proposed, when NASA needed someone to convince 11 other scientists to volunteer for a one-way trip through a wormhole with almost no chance of ever coming home, it was Dr. Man who stepped up. He did not just volunteer, he led, he inspired. He convinced those 11 people to follow him into the unknown, knowing most of them would die alone on whatever planet they landed on. And then he went himself. That is the kind of man Dr. Man was supposed to be. The bravest human being alive. The one who would do what nobody else could. And that is exactly why his betrayal hits so hard. Dr. Man's full name is Hugh Mann. That is not a coincidence. Christopher and Jonathan Nolan gave him that name on purpose, because Dr. Mann is not just a character. He is a mirror. His name sounds exactly like the word human, and that is the point. Dr. Mann is not meant to represent one specific person. He is meant to represent all of us. Every human being who has ever been pushed to their limit and had to choose between doing the right thing and staying alive. Everything that Dr. Mann does in this film, every lie he tells, every act of violence he commits, is presented not as the behavior of a monster, but as the behavior of a normal person who was placed in a situation so extreme that his humanity cracked under the pressure. When Cooper and the crew of the Endurance arrive on Mann's planet, they find him in a cryo-sleep chamber. He has been asleep for years. They wake him up, and the first thing Mann does is break down crying. He grabs Cooper and holds onto him like a drowning man clutching a piece of wood. He weeps openly, uncontrollably, and it is one of the most uncomfortable moments in the entire film, because you can feel the depth of his loneliness pouring out of him. This is a man who has been completely alone on a frozen, lifeless planet for longer than most people can imagine. No other humans, no communication, no hope. Just ice and silence, and the slow realization that nobody was coming for him. Now here is where the story of Dr. Mann gets complicated. When Mann first landed on his planet, he and his robot companion, Kip, explored the surface. It did not take long for Mann to realize the truth. The planet was uninhabitable. The surface was frozen solid. There was no chance of human life surviving here. It was a dead end, and Mann knew it almost immediately. According to the plan, he was supposed to send back honest data. If his planet was not viable, he was supposed to say so, and then he was supposed to accept his fate. The Lazarus missions were designed as one-way trips. The scientists who volunteered knew they might die alone on whatever world they were sent to. That was the deal. That was the sacrifice they signed up for. But knowing you might die alone and actually facing it are two very different things. When Mann looked at that frozen wasteland and understood that this was where he was going to spend the rest of his life, something inside him broke. He could not accept it. He could not sit on that ice and wait for death to come for him. And so he made a choice that would eventually cost people their lives. He lied. He falsified his data. He sent a signal back through the wormhole, saying that his planet showed promise, that it had potential for supporting human life. He made his dead world look alive on paper, because he knew that a positive signal was the only thing that would bring someone to rescue him. And then he went to sleep. He climbed into his cryo chamber, and he did not set a wake-up time. Think about what that means. Without someone coming to wake him, Mann would have slept forever. He would have died in that chamber without ever opening his eyes again. Setting no wake-up time was, in a very real way, an act of giving up. It was a form of ending things on his own terms. If nobody came, he would simply never wake up. If someone did come, they would find him and bring him back. Either way, he would never have to sit on that ice again, awake and alone, staring at a horizon that offered nothing. The fact that the mission he was part of was called the Lazarus mission makes this even more significant. Lazarus is a figure from the Bible who was raised from the dead. Man went to sleep expecting to either die or be resurrected. And when Cooper and the crew arrived and woke him up, they were literally bringing him back from the dead. But the man they brought back was not the hero they expected. After Man is revived and settles in with the crew, things seem normal at first. He is grateful. He is charming. He talks about the mission, about the future, about what needs to happen next. But underneath all of that, there is something deeply wrong. Man knows that once Cooper and the team start examining the planet properly, they will discover the truth. They will realize the data was fake. They will figure out that he lied. And so Man begins to plan. The scene where Man attempts to kill Cooper is one of the most disturbing sequences in the film. Man takes Cooper on a walk across the frozen landscape, supposedly to show him a promising area of the planet. But when they are far enough from the others, Man turns on him. He cracks Cooper's visor and leaves him to suffocate on the surface. And as Cooper lies there, gasping for air, man does something that reveals everything about who he has become. He talks. He does not run away. He does not stay silent. He stands over Cooper and explains himself. He says that he is sorry. He says he cannot watch Cooper die because he cannot bear it. But he does not stop it either. He tells Cooper about the survival instinct. He calls it the greatest single source of inspiration that humans have. He says that evolution has not yet moved past that basic barrier, that we can care deeply and selflessly about the people we know, but that caring rarely reaches beyond our immediate circle when our own survival is on the line. This is man's philosophy, and it is terrifying because it is not entirely wrong. He is not making things up. He is describing something that most honest people would admit is at least partly true. When your own life is at stake, when you are staring at the real possibility of your own death, the instinct to survive is overwhelming. It drowns out morality. It drowns out loyalty. It drowns out everything except the desperate, animal need to keep breathing for one more second. Man is not saying this to justify himself. He is saying it because he believes it is the truth about all people. He believes that anyone in his position would have done exactly the same thing. And the most frightening part is that he might be right about some of us. But Interstellar does not agree with man. That is the crucial distinction. The film lets man make his argument, and then it systematically dismantles it through the actions of every other major character. Cooper does not put his own survival first. He sacrifices himself by detaching into the black hole so that Amelia Brand can reach Edmund's planet. Amelia Brand does not put her own survival first. She continues the mission alone, landing on a strange world with no guarantee anyone will ever follow her. Murph does not put her own survival first. She stays on a dying planet and keeps working on an equation everyone else has given up on. The entire film is populated by people who prove man wrong, people who choose something bigger than their own heartbeat, people whose love and sense of duty overpower the survival instinct that man claims is unbeatable. Meanwhile, man's betrayal spirals further. He has rigged his robot Kip with a booby trap. When Romilly, one of the Endurance crew members, tries to access Kip's data to see what man's planet is really like, the trap triggers. The explosion kills Romilly instantly. Romilly, who had spent 23 years alone on the Endurance, waiting for Cooper and Brand to return from Miller's planet. Romilly, who had passed the time by studying the black hole and listening to recordings of rain and crickets from Earth to keep himself sane. Romilly, who survived all of that loneliness and isolation, only to be killed by a man who was supposed to be the best of them. Man did not set the trap specifically to kill Romilly. He set it to prevent anyone from discovering the truth about his planet. But the result is the same. A good man is dead because man could not face the consequences of his own lie. After the explosion, man's plan shifts. He steals one of the crew's ships, Ranger 1, and heads for the Endurance, the main ship orbiting the planet. His plan now is to take the Endurance and continue the mission himself, traveling to another planet and starting Plan B with the frozen embryos on board. He has convinced himself that this is noble. He has convinced himself that by surviving, by getting to another planet, he is saving the human race. As he flies toward the Endurance, he even recites the Dylan Thomas poem. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. In man's mind, he is raging, he is fighting, he is being brave. But the audience can see what man cannot. He is not raging against anything. He is running. He is running from the ice planet, from his guilt, from the truth of what he has done. He has dressed his cowardice in the language of heroism, and he has repeated it to himself so many times that he actually believes it. The way man dies is brutal and fitting. He tries to manually dock his stolen ship with the Endurance. but he does not know how to do it properly. Cooper, who is still alive thanks to Amelia Brand reaching him in time, desperately tries to warn Man over the radio. He tells him not to attempt the docking, that the procedure is dangerous, that it will not work. But Man does not listen. He is too far gone. He has convinced himself that he is the hero of this story, that the rules do not apply to him, that his survival is more important than anything else. He forces the airlock open, and the explosive decompression kills him instantly and severely damages the endurance. Man's last act on screen is one of arrogance, a man who believed he knew better than everyone else, who believed his survival mattered more than anyone else's, undone by the same overconfidence that led him to fake his data in the first place. What makes Dr. Man such a remarkable character is that the film never completely demonizes him. It would have been easy for the Nolan brothers to write Man as a simple villain, a bad guy who does bad things because he is bad, but they did not do that. They wrote him as a good man who was broken by circumstances that would break almost anyone. Before the isolation, before the ice planet, Man was genuinely one of the best. He was brave. He was brilliant. He was selfless enough to lead a suicide mission. The film makes it very clear that the man who tried to kill Cooper is not the same man who volunteered for the Lazarus mission. Something happened to him in between. Years of total isolation, the death of all hope, the crushing knowledge that nobody was coming for him, and that his planet was worthless. All of it wore away at the person he used to be, until there was nothing left except the survival instinct he talked about so passionately. And that is the real horror of Dr. Man. Not that he is evil, but that he is human. His name tells you everything. He is us. He is what any of us might become if we were pushed far enough, alone long enough, and afraid enough. The film is not saying that all humans are like Man. It is saying that all humans have the potential to be like Man, if the right pressure is applied. And the only thing that separates Cooper from Man, the only thing that keeps Cooper from making the same choices, is not willpower or moral superiority. It is love. Cooper has someone to go back to. Cooper has Murph. Man had no one. And without that connection to another human being, without that anchor holding you to something bigger than yourself, the survival instinct wins. Every time. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Man believed the survival instinct was the most powerful force in human nature. But the film is about to prove him wrong. On a water planet orbiting a black hole, time itself is about to become the most powerful enemy Cooper has ever faced. And what it takes from him will prove that there is something even stronger than the will to live. Section 5, 1 hour, 7 years. How time became the film's true villain. There are moments in film that change the way you see the world after you leave the theater. Moments that burrow into your mind and stay there for days, weeks, years. The Miller's Planet sequence in Interstellar is one of those moments. It is the scene that transforms the film from a space adventure into something far more personal and far more painful. It is where Interstellar stops being a movie about saving the human race and starts being a movie about what it costs to try. And what it costs is time, not fuel, not oxygen, not courage. Time, the one resource in the entire universe that you cannot earn back once it is spent. To understand what happens on Miller's Planet, you need to understand one idea. It is an idea that comes from Albert Einstein, and while it sounds complicated, the basic version is actually very simple. Einstein figured out that time does not move at the same speed everywhere. We tend to think of time as constant. 1 second here is 1 second there. 1 hour in your bedroom is 1 hour on the other side of the world. But Einstein showed that this is not actually true. Time is affected by gravity. The stronger the gravitational pull in a given location, the slower time moves there. compared to somewhere with weaker gravity. This is not science fiction. This is real. Scientists have tested it with extremely precise clocks placed at different heights above the Earth. The clock closer to the ground, where gravity is slightly stronger, ticks a tiny bit slower than the clock higher up. The difference on Earth is so small that you would never notice it in your daily life. But near something with an enormously powerful gravitational pull, like a supermassive black hole, the difference becomes staggering. Miller's planet orbits very close to Gargantua, the supermassive black hole at the center of the story. Gargantua is not a small black hole. According to the science worked out by Kip Thorne, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who served as the scientific consultant and executive producer on the film, Gargantua has a mass of roughly 100 million times that of our Sun. It is spinning at nearly the maximum possible speed for a black hole, close to the absolute limit that the laws of physics allow. And because Miller's planet orbits so close to this monstrous object, the gravitational pull on the planet is so extreme that time there moves at a crawl compared to the rest of the universe. Romilly, the crew member who stays aboard the Endurance while the others go down to the surface, does the math before they leave. He calculates that every single hour spent on Miller's planet equals 7 years back on Earth. 1 hour. 7 years. Let that sink in. If you spent a full day on that planet, 48 years would have passed for everyone you know. If you spent a weekend there, over a century would be gone. The people you love would be dead. The world you knew would be unrecognizable. And for you, it would have felt like a weekend. When Christopher Nolan first told Kip Thorne how much time slowing he wanted on Miller's planet, Thorne was shocked. He did not think that kind of extreme difference was physically possible. He told Nolan so. But Nolan insisted. He said the ratio was non-negotiable because the story needed it. So Thorne went home and spent time doing calculations with Einstein's equations. And he found a way to make it work. If Gargantua was spinning fast enough, almost impossibly fast, but still within the bounds of what physics allows, then a planet in a close but stable orbit could experience exactly this kind of extreme time difference. Gargantua would need to be spinning at a rate that is only 1 part in 100 trillion, less than the absolute maximum spin possible. Unlikely in the real universe, but not impossible. And for Nolan, that was enough. Interstellar is science fiction, not fantasy. The rules bend, but they do not break. The crew knows about the time difference before they land. Cooper understands what is at stake. He tells everyone they need to be fast, get down to the surface, check for signs of Dr. Laura Miller, who landed there years before, collect whatever data they can, and get out. Every minute they waste is months lost on Earth. Every delay is years gone from the lives of the people they left behind. Cooper's children are growing up back home. Murph is getting older. Tom is getting older. And every second Cooper spends on that water-covered planet is a second he can never get back with them. But things go wrong almost immediately. Miller's planet is an ocean world covered in water that is only about knee-deep across its entire surface. The gravity on the surface is brutal, roughly 130% of Earth's gravity, which means every step feels heavier, every movement is slower, every action takes more effort. When they land, they find wreckage from Dr. Miller's ship, scattered across the shallow ocean. Miller is gone. And then Amelia Brand notices something on the horizon. What looks like a mountain range in the distance is not a mountain range at all. It is a wave, a wall of water thousands of feet tall, rolling toward them across the surface of the planet. These waves are caused by Gargantua's gravitational pull, stretching and squeezing the planet, creating massive tides that circle the surface endlessly. The crew barely survives the first wave. Their ship is flooded. Doyle, one of the crew members, is killed. Brand is nearly swept away, and by the time they recover, drain the engines, and managed to take off again. They have been on the surface far longer than they planned. Not hours longer, maybe 45 minutes longer than they should have been. It does not sound like much, but when every hour equals 7 years, 45 extra minutes is a catastrophe. When Cooper and Brand finally make it back to the Endurance, Romilly is waiting for them. But he is not the same man they left behind a few hours ago. He is older, visibly older. His hair is different. His face is more worn. He has been waiting for them for 23 years, 4 months, and 8 days. Alone, on a ship orbiting a black hole, for over 2 decades, while Cooper and Brand were down on that planet for roughly 3 hours and 17 minutes total. 23 years of real time passed for Romilly and for everyone on Earth. Cooper's children are now adults. Murph is the same age Cooper was when he left. An entire generation has gone by, and Cooper missed all of it because of a wave. What follows is the single most emotionally devastating scene in the entire film. Cooper sits down at the communication console and starts playing back the video messages that have been piling up for 23 years. He sees Tom first. Tom as a young man, talking about his life, his work on the farm, getting married, having a son. Then more messages. Tom's son gets sick. Tom's son dies. Tom sends fewer messages. His face gets harder. His hope fades. He stops believing his father is ever coming back. Then Murph appears. Grown-up Murph, played now by Jessica Chastain, sitting in front of the camera on what she says is her birthday. She is the same age Cooper was the day he left, and she tells him that. She says today is the day he promised he would come back, and he is not there. Matthew McConaughey's performance in this scene is extraordinary. Cooper does not speak. He just watches. Tears stream down his face as 23 years of his children's lives play out in front of him in a matter of minutes. He watches them grow up. He watches them suffer. He watches them stop hoping, and there is nothing he can do about any of it because it has already happened. Those years are gone. He was on a planet for 3 hours, and his family lived an entire life without him. Hans Zimmer's score during the Miller's Planet sequence deserves its own recognition because it is doing something incredibly clever that most viewers do not consciously notice. The track that plays during the landing and the wave sequence is called Mountains, and layered underneath the swelling organ and the rising tension is a constant, rhythmic, ticking sound. A steady tick, tick, tick that never stops. According to a widely discussed analysis, each one of those ticks represents roughly 1¼ seconds of screen time, which translates to approximately 1 full day passing on Earth. Every tick is a day. Every tick is 24 hours that Cooper will never get back. Every tick is Murph getting 1 day older, Tom getting 1 day older, the world moving 1 day further away from the man who left to save it. Zimmer built a clock into the music itself, and whether you notice it consciously or not, your brain feels it. The tension of that scene does not just come from the wave. It comes from the ticking. It comes from the relentless, mechanical reminder that time is being stolen from these people with every passing second. This is what makes Interstellar different from almost every other science fiction film ever made. In most space movies, time is just the background. Characters travel from planet to planet, and time passes, but it does not cost them anything personal. In Interstellar, time is the price. Time is what Cooper pays for every decision. Landing on Miller's planet cost him 23 years with his children. That is not an abstract concept. That is real, tangible, irreversible loss. He will never see Murph as a teenager. He will never see Tom get married. He will never hold Tom's first child. Those moments happened, and he was not there for any of them. And no amount of traveling through wormholes or solving equations will ever bring those moments back. And the film uses this loss to make a point that goes beyond the plot. Interstellar is arguing that time is the most valuable thing any of us have, and we do not appreciate it until it is gone. You do not need to travel to a planet orbiting a black hole to understand this. Every parent has had the experience of looking at their child and suddenly realizing how fast the years went by. Every person has had a moment where they think about someone they love and realize they have not called them in months or years and wonder where the time went. The physics of Miller's planet are extreme, but the feeling is universal. Time takes things from us. It takes them quietly, without asking, and it never gives them back. Interstellar just takes that truth and amplifies it to a cosmic scale, so that you cannot ignore it. The Miller's planet sequence also reveals something important about Dr. Laura Miller herself. When the crew arrived on the surface, they found pieces of her wreckage. Miller had landed on the planet years before the Endurance crew in terms of Earth time. But because of the extreme time difference, she had only been dead for minutes when they arrived. She barely had time to realize the planet was not viable before a wave took her out. From Earth's perspective, Miller had been silent for years, and people assumed she had been exploring the whole time. In reality, she was alive on that planet for an incredibly brief period before she died. The signal they picked up from her was not a sign of a thriving explorer. It was the echo of someone who had just arrived and was almost immediately killed. The planet that looked so promising on paper was a death trap hiding behind the math of time itself. When Cooper finishes watching the video messages, there is a moment of silence. He sits there, surrounded by the emptiness of space, and he has to make a choice. Does he give up? Does he try to go home to whatever is left of his family? Or does he push forward, knowing that every step he takes deeper into this mission costs him more time, more years, more of the life he left behind? And Cooper, being Cooper, pushes forward. Not because he does not care about the time he has lost. He pushes forward because the time he has lost makes the mission more important, not less. If he turns back now, all those lost years mean nothing. If he keeps going, there is still a chance that the sacrifice will have been worth it. There is still a chance that Murph will forgive him. There is still a chance that he can keep his promise. 23 years, gone in 3 hours. And the universe did not care. The black hole did not care. The waves did not care. Time moved forward on Earth the same way it always does, 1 second at a time. And it carried Cooper's children with it. All Cooper can do now is try to make sure those lost years were not wasted. All he can do is keep going. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Miller's planet taught Cooper something he was not expecting. It taught him that time is not just a number on a clock. It is the space between the people you love. And if the film is right, if Interstellar's deepest argument holds up, then there might be something in the universe that can reach across that space. Something that does not care about gravity or relativity or the speed of light. And that something is about to get its most passionate defense from the last person Cooper expects. Section 6. Love as a Dimension. Brand's speech and why the film takes it seriously. There is a scene in Interstellar that divides audiences more than any other. It is not the black hole. It is not the Tesseract. It is not the time travel, or the frozen planet, or the giant waves. It is a woman sitting in a spaceship, making an argument about love. And when she makes that argument, half the audience leans forward, and the other half rolls their eyes. Amelia Brand's love speech is the single most debated moment in the entire film. Critics called it sentimental. Scientists called it unscientific. Some viewers called it the one weak point in an otherwise brilliant movie. But here is the thing that most of those people missed. The film does not just present Brand's argument, it proves it. By the time the credits roll, every single thing Brand says in that speech has been validated by the events of the story. The question is not whether her speech was sentimental. The question is whether sentimentality can also be true. The scene happens after the disaster on Miller's planet. The crew has lost Doyle. They have lost 23 years. They are damaged, exhausted, and running low on fuel. They only have enough to visit one more planet before they have to make a final decision about the mission. There are two options. They can go to Man's planet, where Dr. Man has been sending a positive signal, indicating his world might be habitable. Or they can go to Edmund's planet, where another Lazarus explorer named Wolf Edmonds landed and also sent back promising data. On paper, Man's planet looks like the safer bet. His signal is stronger. His data looks more complete. From a purely logical standpoint, Man is the obvious choice. But Brand does not want to go to Man's planet. She wants to go to Edmund's planet. And when Cooper presses her on why, she tells the truth. She is in love with Wolf Edmonds. They were together before the mission. He is the reason she volunteered for the Endurance in the first place. She wants to go to his planet because he is there, or at least she hopes he is. And she knows how that sounds. She knows that admitting she has a personal, emotional reason for choosing Edmonds makes her look biased. It makes her look like a scientist who is letting her feelings cloud her judgment. And Cooper calls her on it. He pushes back. He essentially tells her that they cannot make a decision that affects the survival of the human race based on her feelings for a man. And that is when Brand makes her argument. She does not back down. She does not apologize for being emotional. Instead, she leans into it. She says that love is not something they invented. It is not just a chemical reaction in the brain. It is not just evolution tricking us into protecting our offspring. Love, she says, is observable. It is powerful. It is something that pulls us towards specific people, across distances that should make connection impossible. She says that maybe love is something we do not fully understand yet, that maybe it has a function or a meaning that goes beyond what science can currently explain. She says love is the one thing they can feel that goes beyond the limits of time and space. And maybe, she argues, they should trust it, even if they cannot put it into an equation. Cooper does not buy it. Not at that moment. He listens, but he sides with the logic. The crew votes to go to Man's planet because the data is stronger. It is the rational decision. It is the safe decision. And it turns out to be the wrong one. Man's planet is a frozen wasteland. Man faked his data. He tries to kill Cooper. Rumley dies. The Endurance is nearly destroyed. Everything about the rational choice leads to disaster. Meanwhile, Edmund's planet, the one Brand wanted to go to, the one she chose because of love, turns out to be the viable one. It is the planet where Brand eventually lands alone at the end of the film to begin building a new home for humanity. The planet that love pointed toward was the right answer all along. Now, a skeptic would say this is just a coincidence within the plot. Brand got lucky. Her emotional bias happened to align with the correct scientific outcome, but that does not prove anything about love as a real force. And that would be a fair argument if the rest of the film did not spend its entire final act proving Brand right on a much deeper level. Because what happens in the Tesseract at the end of the story is not luck. It is not coincidence. It is the film's structure deliberately confirming that love functions as something more than emotion. Cooper reaches his daughter across dimensions of time and space, not through science alone, but through the bond between a father and his child. The beings who built the Tesseract, the future humans who exist in 5 dimensions, can see all of time. They can perceive every moment that has ever happened, and every moment that will ever happen. But they cannot find the right moment. They cannot locate the specific point in time where a message needs to be delivered. They need Cooper for that. And Cooper can find Murph, not because he is smart, not because he is brave, not because he has any special training, but because he loves her. His love acts like gravity, pulling him toward her across the noise of infinite moments. Love is what gives him a reference point in a dimension where time has no fixed direction. Matthew McConaughey himself put it in the clearest terms when he talked about the Tesseract scene in behind-the-scenes material for the film. He said, "Love is space-time. Love is that fifth dimension. Love is that thing that travels through time, forwards, backwards, up and down." That is not the kind of statement an actor makes about a random plot device. That is the statement of someone who understood exactly what the film was trying to say. Love is not just a theme in Interstellar. It is a mechanism. It is the thing that makes the plot work. Without it, the Tesseract is useless. The data never reaches Murph, and humanity dies. And this brings us back to Brand's speech. When she talks about love being observable, she is not being poetic for the sake of poetry. She is foreshadowing the entire resolution of the film. When she says love might be something that transcends dimensions of time and space, she is describing exactly what happens in the third act. When she says they should trust it, even if they cannot understand it, she is making the same argument that the film itself will make when Cooper's love for Murph becomes the bridge between dimensions. Brand is not the sentimental one in that scene. She is the one who is right. Cooper is the one who is wrong. And the irony is that Cooper will spend the rest of the film learning the lesson that Brand tried to teach him in that moment. There is a rich philosophical tradition behind what Brand is saying, even though the film never names it directly. The Romantic movement of the 19th century, a movement in art, literature, and philosophy, made arguments that sound very similar to Brand's speech. Thinkers and writers like William Wordsworth and Percy Bysshe Shelley believed that human emotion and intuition had access to truths that cold reason could not reach. They argued that the heart could understand things that the mind could not, and that dismissing emotion as irrational was itself a kind of blindness. In their view, the universe was not just a machine made of numbers and laws. It was alive with meaning, and the way to access that meaning was through human feeling, through connection, through the experience of the sublime. Interstellar does not reference the Romantics by name, but the spirit of their philosophy runs through Brand's entire argument. She is not anti-science. She is a scientist herself, one of the best in the world. She is simply saying that science might not have all the answers yet, and that something as powerful and as universal as love might turn out to have a significance that we have not figured out how to measure. What makes this work within the film, rather than feeling like a lecture, is that Brand pays a price for her honesty. When she tells Cooper and the rest of the crew that she loves Edmonds, she is making herself vulnerable. She is admitting something deeply personal in a professional setting, where emotion is supposed to take a back seat to logic. And Cooper uses it against her. Not cruelly, but firmly. He treats her admission as evidence of bias rather than evidence of insight. And the crew goes to man's planet. Brand has to watch the group make what she believes is the wrong choice, and she has to go along with it because she has been overruled. She then has to witness the consequences of that choice. She watches man betray them. She watches Romilly die. She helps Cooper survive. And through all of it, she never says, "I told you so." She does not rub it in. She just keeps going. Because Brand is not someone who needs to be right. She is someone who needs to survive long enough to reach the planet where the man she loves might still be waiting. There is also something important about the way the film handles the relationship between logic and emotion throughout its story. Interstellar does not argue that logic is bad. It does not argue that science is useless. The entire mission is built on science. Kip Thorne's physics are woven into every frame of the film. The wormhole works because of real equations. The time differences work because of real gravitational theory. The Tesseract is built on real ideas about higher dimensions. The film deeply respects science. But it also argues that science alone is not enough. Professor Brand had all the science in the world, and it led him to a lie. Dr. Man was one of the most brilliant scientists alive, and his logic led him to murder. The purely rational characters in this film are the ones who fail. The ones who succeed are the ones who combine intelligence with love. Cooper does not solve the problem by being smart. He solves it by being a father who refuses to let go of his daughter. Murph does not solve the gravity equation by being logical. She solves it because she picks up a watch that her father gave her as a symbol of their bond, and she notices that the second hand is moving in a pattern that is not random. That watch is worth pausing on for a moment. Before Cooper left Earth, he gave Murph his wristwatch. It was a personal gift, something for her to hold on to while he was gone, a physical reminder that he existed and that he intended to come back. Murph kept that watch her entire life. She kept it on the bookshelf in her old bedroom, the same bookshelf where the ghost once knocked books onto the floor. For decades, that watch just sat there, keeping time, waiting. And when Cooper finally reaches the Tesseract and needs to transmit the data that will save humanity, he does not use a radio. He does not use a computer. He uses the watch. He manipulates gravity to move the second hand of that watch in a specific pattern, a code that contains the information Murph needs to solve the equation. The message travels through time, encoded in the ticking of a gift that a father gave his daughter before he left. Love is not just an abstract concept in this movie. It is literally the delivery system for the data that saves the human race. And that is why Brand's speech matters so much. It is not a moment of weakness in the script. It is the thesis statement of the entire film, delivered by the one character brave enough to say it out loud in a room full of people who are not ready to hear it. Brand looks at Cooper and essentially says that love might be more important than logic, and the rest of the movie spends 2 hours proving her right. The critics who dismissed her speech as sentimental were making the same mistake Cooper makes in that scene. They were choosing the rational explanation over the emotional one. And just like Cooper, they were wrong. Christopher Nolan is not a sentimental filmmaker. His other films, Memento, The Dark Knight, Inception, are known for their cold precision and their complex structures. He is a filmmaker who builds puzzles. So when a director like that decides to put a speech about love at the center of his biggest film, it is not because he ran out of ideas. It is because he wanted to challenge the audience. He wanted to see if viewers could accept that a film grounded in real physics and real science could also argue that the most powerful force in the universe is something you feel in your chest. Nolan built the entire structure of Interstellar around this challenge. He gave you the science so you would trust the film, and then he asked you to go one step further and trust the emotion too. Brand's speech is the moment where Interstellar asks you to make a choice. You can stay with the logic, side with Cooper, and treat love as nothing more than a chemical trick of evolution. Or you can listen to Brand, consider the possibility that love means something more than we know, and follow that thread to wherever it leads. The film knows which choice it wants you to make, and in its climax, in a structure built inside a black hole, that turns time into something you can touch, and love into something that can cross dimensions. It shows you exactly where that thread leads. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. It leads to a room full of bookshelves, stretching out in every direction, holding every moment of a daughter's life. And inside that room, her father is about to prove that Brand was right all along. Section 7. Inside the Tesseract, where science and love become the same thing. Everything in Interstellar has been building to this. Every decision Cooper made, every year he lost, every sacrifice, every heartbreak, all of it has been pulling him toward one place. Not a planet, not a star, not a space station, a bedroom. His daughter's bedroom, seen from the inside of a black hole, stretched across 5 dimensions, repeated endlessly in every direction. holding every single moment that ever took place within its walls. The Tesseract sequence is the climax of Interstellar, and it is where every single idea the film has been exploring, the science, the philosophy, the love, all crashed together into one of the most visually and emotionally overwhelming scenes in modern cinema. To get here, Cooper had to give up everything. After the disaster on man's planet, after Romilly's death, after the Endurance was badly damaged, Cooper and Brand found themselves with barely enough fuel and resources to continue. They had one option left. They could use Gargantua's gravity to slingshot the Endurance toward Edmund's planet, giving Brand a chance to land there and begin Plan B. But the math did not work unless they shed weight. Someone had to be left behind, and Cooper, without telling Brand what he was doing until it was too late, detached himself and his robot companion, Tars, from the Endurance and let them fall into the black hole. He sacrificed himself so that Brand could make it to Edmund's planet. He did this knowing he would never see his children again. He did this knowing he was going to die. But he did not die. Instead of being crushed by the forces inside Gargantua, Cooper found himself somewhere else entirely. He entered a structure that the film calls the Tesseract. In simple terms, the Tesseract is a space that was built by beings who exist beyond the dimensions that humans can normally perceive. These beings, who Cooper eventually figures out are humans from the far future, who have evolved to a point where they can interact with 5 dimensions instead of 4. Constructed the Tesseract as a bridge. They built it so that a 3-dimensional human like Cooper could interact with time, as if it were a physical thing he could move through and touch. And the way they built it was deeply personal. The Tesseract is not some abstract grid floating in space. It is Murph's bedroom. Specifically, it is every version of Murph's bedroom that has ever existed, laid out side by side, stretching infinitely in all directions. Every moment that ever occurred in that room is physically present. Cooper can see Murph as a child. He can see Murph as a teenager. He can see Murph as an adult. All of these moments exist simultaneously, like pages in a book that has been fanned open, so you can see every page at once. And Cooper can move between them. Paul Franklin, the visual effects supervisor who led the team that designed this sequence, explained the thinking behind it. He said they explored several different concepts for the Tesseract. One early version was a massive, infinite matrix, a grid that stretched endlessly in every direction without any recognizable features. But Nolan rejected that idea. He wanted the Tesseract to be intimate. He wanted it to be about the relationship between a father and his daughter, not about abstract geometry. So the team built it around Murph's room. Franklin explained that the concept uses something called world lines, which come from Einstein's theory of relativity. The idea is that every object, every person, and every piece of matter in the universe is constantly leaving a trail through both space and time. In the Tesseract, these trails are made visible and physical. Every object in Murph's room, every book, every piece of furniture, every dust particle, has a line stretching through it that represents its entire history. Cooper can see these lines. He can touch them, and when he pushes on them, he sends gravitational ripples to the corresponding moment in time. This is how Cooper realizes the truth. He is the ghost. He has always been the ghost. Those books that fell from Murph's shelf when she was a child were not knocked over by some supernatural being. They were knocked over by Cooper, standing in the Tesseract, desperately pushing at the world lines of those books, trying to get his daughter's attention. The dust that formed binary coordinates on Murph's floor was not a random gravitational anomaly. It was Cooper, manipulating gravity from inside the Tesseract, writing a message in the only language the Tesseract would allow him to use. The coordinates that led him to NASA, the coordinates that started the entire story, were sent by Cooper himself from the future. He sent himself on the mission. He has been trapped in a loop where the end creates the beginning, and the beginning leads to the end. When Cooper first realizes where he is, he does not understand how it works. He panics. He pounds on the back of the bookshelf, screaming at his younger self not to leave, begging himself to stay with Murph. He pushes books off the shelf, and on the other side, young Murph watches them fall. But she cannot hear him. She cannot see him. All she can perceive are the effects of his actions, the gravitational disturbances that manifest as falling objects and moving dust. And Cooper, in that moment, feels the full weight of his situation. He is standing inches away from his daughter, separated by the thinnest barrier imaginable, and he cannot reach her. He can see her, but he cannot touch her. He can affect her world, but he cannot be part of it. It is the most extreme version of the distance that has defined their relationship since he drove away from the farmhouse at the beginning of the film. But then Tars, who also survived the fall into Gargantua, communicates with Cooper. Tars has collected the quantum data from inside the black hole. This is the data that Professor Brand said was impossible to obtain. The data needed to complete the gravity equation. The data that would make Plan A possible and save everyone on Earth. Cooper has it. The question is how to get it to Murph. And this is where the film makes its most powerful statement about love. The beings who built the Tesseract can see all of time. They exist outside of it. They can perceive every moment simultaneously, but they cannot find the right moment to deliver a message. They are too far removed from human experience. They do not have emotional connections to specific points in time. They need Cooper for that. They need his love for Murph to act as a guide, a reference point, a kind of gravitational pull that draws him to exactly the right moment. Cooper says it himself inside the Tesseract. They chose him not because he is special in any scientific way. They chose him because of his connection to Murph. Love is what allows him to navigate the Tesseract. Love is what pulls him to the right place at the right time. In a space where time is a physical dimension with no fixed direction, love is the compass. Cooper finds the moment he needs. He locates the time when the watch he gave Murph is sitting on the bookshelf, face up, second hand ticking, and he begins to transmit. He touches the world lines connected to the watch and manipulates gravity to move the second hand in a specific pattern. The pattern is a code, and the code contains the quantum data that Murph needs to solve the gravity equation. He is sending the most important scientific information in human history through the ticking of a wristwatch. Not through a radio signal, not through a computer, through a gift that a father gave his daughter before he left. A gift she kept for decades, because she could not let go of him, even when she was furious at him. On the other side, years in the past from Cooper's perspective, but happening simultaneously in the Tesseract, an adult Murph returns to her childhood bedroom. She picks up the watch. She notices the second hand moving in an irregular pattern, twitching forward and backward in a way that is not random. And because Cooper raised her to be curious, because he taught her as a child to observe the unexplained and figure it out instead of looking away, she pays attention. She grabs a notebook. She starts writing down the pattern. And she cracks it. She decodes the data her father is sending her from inside a black hole, through time itself, encoded in the hand of a watch she has carried with her since she was 10 years old. The production team talked about why they chose the bookshelf and the bedroom as the center of the Tesseract, instead of something more visually grand. Franklin said that the whole idea was that the beings who created the Tesseract knew this place was important. They knew this room was the connection point between Cooper and Murph. But because they exist outside of time and space, they have no emotional connection to any specific moment. They needed Cooper to provide that connection. They needed his love to be the thing that made the Tesseract work. Without Cooper's bond to Murph, the structure would have been useless. It would have been a library with no index, a map with no destination marked. Love is what gives the Tesseract its purpose. Nolan made a deliberate choice to build the Tesseract as a physical set, rather than creating it entirely with computers. The actors walked through real constructed spaces. Projectors displayed images of the bedroom on the walls around them. Wires and rigs allowed McConaughey to move through the space in ways that felt genuinely disorienting. The result is a scene that feels real in a way that pure computer imagery often does not. When Cooper reaches through the shelves, you can feel the physical weight of his desperation. When he taps on the world lines to move the watch hand, you can see the effort in his body. Nolan wanted the audience to feel that Cooper was really there, really reaching, really trying to touch his daughter one more time. And then the Tesseract begins to close. Once the message has been delivered, once the data has been sent, the structure starts collapsing around Cooper. The walls fold inward. The infinite rooms begin to shrink. And in the final moments before the Tesseract disappears, Cooper reaches out toward the bookshelf one last time. On the other side, young Murph reaches out toward the books. Their hands almost touch. Almost, but not quite. The barrier between them remains. And then Cooper is pulled away, back through the wormhole, back toward Saturn, back toward our solar system. The Tesseract closes behind him, and the most extraordinary room in the universe ceases to exist. What the Tesseract proves within the logic of the film is that Brand was right. Love is not just an emotion. It is a force that can cross dimensions. It is the thing that guided Cooper to the right moment in an infinite sea of moments. It is the delivery mechanism for the data that saved the human race. Science built the Tesseract. Physics made it possible. But love is what made it work. And without Cooper's bond with Murph, none of it would have mattered. The equation would never have been solved. The space stations would never have launched. Humanity would have died on Earth, and the future beings who built the Tesseract would never have existed to build it in the first place. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Which raises a question so deep and so strange that it has kept philosophers and physicists arguing for centuries. If the future created the past, and the past created the future, then who really saved humanity? And does time even work the way we think it does? Section 8. The Bootstrap Paradox. Who really saved humanity? There is a question at the heart of Interstellar that the film never fully answers. It presents it, lets you sit with it, and then moves on, trusting that the weight of it will stay with you long after the screen goes dark. The question is this: if future humans built the wormhole and the Tesseract so that Cooper could save humanity, but humanity could only survive to become those future humans because Cooper saved them, then who actually saved who? Where did the rescue begin? Where does the loop start? The answer, depending on how you think about it, is either nowhere or everywhere. And the fact that both answers might be true at the same time is one of the most fascinating philosophical ideas the film puts forward. This kind of puzzle has a name. It is called a bootstrap paradox, or sometimes a causal loop. The name comes from the old expression of pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, which is something that is physically impossible. You cannot lift yourself into the air by grabbing your own shoes and pulling. And yet, in a causal loop, that is essentially what happens. An event in the future causes something to happen in the past. And that thing in the past is what creates the future event in the first place. There is no clear starting point. There is no first cause. The loop just exists, feeding into itself like a circle with no beginning and no end. In Interstellar, the loop works like this. Sometime in the far distant future, human beings have evolved to the point where they can exist in 5 dimensions. They can perceive all of time simultaneously, the way we perceive all 3 directions of space. These future humans look back through history and find a moment where their entire species nearly went extinct. Earth was dying. Crops were failing. The atmosphere was being consumed. Humanity was on the verge of disappearing forever. And so these future beings decide to help. They place a wormhole near Saturn, a shortcut through space that allows people in the past to travel to a distant galaxy and search for a new home. They also build the Tesseract inside the black hole Gargantua, a structure that allows Cooper to communicate with Murph across time using gravity. Because of the wormhole, Cooper is able to travel to the other galaxy. Because of the Tesseract, Cooper is able to send Murph the quantum data she needs to solve the gravity equation. Because Murph solves the equation, humanity is able to build massive space stations and evacuate Earth. Because humanity survives, it eventually evolves over thousands or millions of years into the five-dimensional beings who placed the wormhole and built the Tesseract in the first place. The future created the conditions for its own existence. The rescue was only possible because the people being rescued eventually became the rescuers. Now, if your head is spinning, that is normal. Causal loops are not easy to wrap your mind around because they violate the way we normally think about cause and effect. In everyday life, causes come before effects. You drop a glass, and then it shatters. The dropping causes the shattering. The shattering does not cause the dropping. Time moves in one direction, and events follow that direction. But in a causal loop, this rule breaks down. The effect is also the cause. The future is also the past, and neither one can exist without the other. This is not just something the Nolan brothers invented for the sake of a cool plot twist. Kip Thorne, the physicist behind the film Science, has actually studied these kinds of problems in real physics. In his book, The Science of Interstellar, Thorne explains that in Einstein's theory of general relativity, causes do not necessarily have to come before effects in the way we experience them in everyday life. What the laws of physics require is not that events happen in a specific order, but that the entire history of the universe is self-consistent. In other words, there cannot be contradictions. You cannot go back in time and prevent yourself from being born, because that would create a contradiction. But you can have a loop where the future influences the past, as long as everything fits together without any logical errors. The film uses a comparison that helps make this clearer. It is similar to what happens in The Terminator, a comparison Thorne himself has made. In that film, John Connor sends a soldier named Kyle Reese back in time to protect his mother, Sarah Connor. But while in the past, Reese becomes John Connor's father. So John Connor sent back the man who would become his own father. Without sending Reese back, Connor would never have been born. Without being born, Connor could never have sent Reese back. The loop feeds itself. There is no version of events where one thing happens first. Both events depend on each other, and the timeline only works because everything is consistent. Interstellar's loop is essentially the same structure, but on a much larger scale. Cooper did not change the past when he was in the Tesseract. He fulfilled it. The books that fell in Murph's room when she was a child fell because Cooper pushed them from inside the Tesseract. That already happened. It happened before Cooper even left Earth. When young Murph told her father about the ghost in her room, the ghost was already Cooper. When the dust fell in the pattern of binary coordinates and led Cooper to NASA, that message had already been sent by Cooper from the Tesseract. The beginning of the film contains the end of the film. The end of the film creates the beginning. And every event in between is part of a chain that has no first link. This raises one of the biggest philosophical questions the film explores. Does this mean everything in Interstellar was predetermined? Was Cooper always going to leave his family? Was he always going to fall into the black hole? Was he always going to send the message through the watch? If the future already exists and has already reached back to influence the past, then was there ever any real choice involved? Or is everyone in the film just following a script that was written by the structure of time itself? The film does not give a definitive answer to this, and that is part of what makes it so interesting. On one hand, you could read Interstellar as a story about fate. Everything happened exactly as it was always going to happen. Cooper was always going to be the ghost. Murph was always going to solve the equation. Humanity was always going to survive. The loop was always complete. There was never a version of events where things went differently. And from a certain perspective, that is comforting. It means the universe has a plan. It means things work out. It means the suffering was not random. But on the other hand, you could read the film as something more unsettling. If the loop has no beginning, if there is no first cause, then nobody decided to save humanity. The rescue was not a choice. It was a feature of the structure of time. The future humans did not choose to build the wormhole out of compassion. They built it because they always built it. Cooper did not choose to sacrifice himself out of love. He sacrificed himself because that is what the loop required. And if that is true, then the love that drives the entire story might not be a force that transcends physics. It might just be another part of the machine, another gear in the clock. The film leans toward a more hopeful reading, though. Cooper, inside the Tesseract, is not behaving like a man following a predetermined path. He is panicking. He is crying. He is making desperate choices in real time, trying to figure out how the Tesseract works, trying to get through to his daughter, failing and trying again. His experience inside the Tesseract does not feel like fate. It feels like love. It feels like a father doing everything in his power to reach his child. And the film seems to suggest that this is the point. Maybe the loop exists because love is powerful enough to create it. Maybe the reason the future reached back is not because the timeline required it, but because love required it. The causal loop is not evidence that free will does not exist. It is evidence that love is so strong it can hold a paradox together. There is something else worth considering about the nature of the beings who built the Tesseract. Cooper concludes that they are humans from the far future. Not aliens, not gods. Humans who evolved beyond our current understanding. And if that is true, then the wormhole and the Tesseract are not gifts from some higher power. They are humanity saving itself. They are proof that the species Cooper is fighting to protect actually does survive, actually does evolve, actually does become something extraordinary. The existence of the wormhole is itself the answer to the question the mission was designed to solve. Will humanity make it? Yes. We know it will because the evidence of our survival is the very thing that makes our survival possible. This is why the bootstrap paradox in Interstellar is not just a clever plot device. It is the film's deepest statement about hope. The paradox says that the future is not something that just happens to you. The future is something that reaches back and participates in its own creation. And if love is the force that connects the future to the past, then every act of love is, in some small way, an act of building the future. Every time you reach across distance or time to connect with someone, you are doing what Cooper did in the Tesseract. You are sending a message forward and backward at the same time. You are telling the universe that this connection matters, that this person matters, and that the bond between you is strong enough to survive whatever time throws at it. The film also cleverly avoids the trap that most time travel stories fall into. In most movies that involve changing the past, there is always a risk of creating a contradiction. If you go back and change something, then the reason you went back disappears, and you would never have gone back in the first place. Interstellar avoids this entirely by making Cooper's actions in the past something that already happened. He is not changing anything. He is completing the loop. The books already fell. The dust already formed coordinates. The watch already ticked in code. Cooper is not rewriting history. He is fulfilling it. And because everything is self-consistent, there are no paradoxes in the traditional sense. There are no contradictions. There is only a loop that works perfectly, held together by gravity on one side and love on the other. Cooper is eventually pulled out of the Tesseract after the message has been delivered. The structure closes around him, folding in on itself, and he is carried back through the wormhole toward Saturn. He wakes up on a space station orbiting Saturn, decades in the future, in a world that Murph built, using the data he sent her through a watch from inside a black hole, from inside a loop that has no beginning and no end. And when he opens his eyes, he is surrounded by a world that exists because a father loved his daughter enough to fall into the darkest place in the universe and still find a way to reach her. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The science made the loop possible. The physics allowed gravity to carry information across dimensions, but none of it would have worked without something that no equation can fully describe. Something that Zimmer's score has been whispering about since the first note of the film. Something that lives in the space between a pipe organ and a church ceiling, between the human need to understand and the human willingness to believe. Section 9. The Sound of Reaching for God. Hans Zimmer's organ and the philosophy of the score. The story of how the Interstellar score was born is one of the most remarkable behind-the-scenes stories in modern film. It begins at a party. Christopher Nolan approached Hans Zimmer, his longtime collaborator, and told him he had an idea for a new film. But he did not tell Zimmer what the film was about. He did not mention space. He did not mention black holes or wormholes, or time travel, or dying crops. Instead, Nolan handed Zimmer an envelope. Inside was a single page. On that page was a short fable about a father who has to leave his child to do an important job. The fable contained just 2 lines of dialogue. The father says, "I'll come back." The child asks, "When?" That was it. That was all Zimmer had to work with. No title, no genre, no plot. Just a father, a child, a promise, and a question. Nolan asked Zimmer to spend one day writing something based on that fable. Just one day. Whatever came to him. Zimmer went home, and in a single night, composed a 4-minute piece for piano and organ. He did not write an epic space theme. He did not write an action cue. He wrote something small and fragile and deeply personal. He later said that what he wrote was about what it meant to be a father. It was about his own son. It was about that specific feeling of loving someone so much that leaving them, even for a good reason, tears something inside you that never fully heals. When Zimmer played the piece for Nolan, the director smiled. Then he told Zimmer what the film was actually about. A dying Earth. A mission through a wormhole. Black holes and distant planets, and the survival of the human race. Zimmer was stunned. He told Nolan that he had written something tiny and fragile, while Nolan was describing something enormous and epic. How could that small piano piece possibly serve as the heart of a film this massive? But Nolan reassured him. He said that the piece Zimmer had written was exactly what the film needed. He said now he knew what the heart of the story was. The epic space adventure would be built around that small, quiet piece about a father and his child. The biggest film Nolan had ever made would be powered by the smallest emotion Zimmer had ever composed. The decision to use a pipe organ as the primary instrument in the score came from a conversation between Nolan and Zimmer about what had not been done before. They had already used big drums, brass sections, and driving rhythms in their previous collaborations on The Dark Knight trilogy and Inception. They wanted something different, something that had never been the voice of a space film before. Nolan suggested a pipe organ, and Zimmer's first reaction was to laugh. He associated organs with old horror films, Dracula, Frankenstein, haunted houses. But the more he thought about it, the more the organ made sense. Not because of horror, because of everything else the organ represents. A pipe organ is one of the most extraordinary instruments ever built by human hands. It is enormous. It fills entire rooms. Some of the largest pipe organs have thousands of individual pipes. some of them over 30 feet tall. Building one is a massive undertaking that can take years, and the sound it produces is unlike anything else in music. It can be quiet and delicate, a whisper of air passing through metal, or it can be thunderous and overwhelming, filling a cathedral with sound so powerful you feel it in your chest before you hear it with your ears. The organ is, in many ways, the ultimate expression of human ambition applied to the creation of beauty. People spent centuries perfecting these instruments, not because they needed to, but because they wanted to create something magnificent. Zimmer noticed something else about the organ that connected perfectly to the film. He said the large pipes, the 32 and 64-foot ones, look like rockets. That visual connection, an instrument that looks like it is built for launch, felt right for a film about leaving Earth. But there was a deeper connection, too. A pipe organ can only make sound when air passes through it. It needs to breathe, and Zimmer loved that idea. An instrument that breathes, making music for a film about astronauts for whom every breath is precious. The organ became a symbol of life itself, fragile and dependent on something as simple as air. They chose to record at Temple Church in London, a historic church with a 1926 four-manual Harrison and Harrison organ. The choice was practical because the church was quiet, far from traffic noise that might interfere with recording, but it was also symbolic. Nolan has spoken about the connection between religion and space exploration. He said that religion is humanity's way of describing and explaining the vast unknown, of trying to make sense of our place in something so enormous that our minds cannot fully hold it. And space exploration, in its own way, does the same thing. It pushes us toward the edge of what we know and forces us to confront the things we do not understand. By recording the score in a church, on an instrument that has been associated with worship and the divine for centuries, Nolan and Zimmer were drawing a line between the human search for God and the human search for answers among the stars. The organ does not play religious music in the film, but it carries the weight of centuries of spiritual association with it, and that weight gives the score a quality that goes beyond entertainment. It sounds like something sacred. The score operates on multiple levels throughout the film. On the surface, it is doing what every good film score does, supporting the emotion of each scene, building tension when needed, providing release when the moment calls for it. But underneath that, Zimmer built specific philosophical ideas into the music itself. The main theme resolves within 3 chords, and those 3 chords cycle in a pattern that always returns home, only to pull away again. Zimmer has described this as the emotional core of the entire film. Every 12 seconds or so, you feel like you have arrived somewhere safe and familiar, and then the music pulls you away from it. It is the feeling of reaching for home and having it slip through your fingers. It is Cooper's entire journey compressed into a musical phrase. He keeps trying to get back to Murph. The music keeps trying to get back to its resolution, and both of them keep being pulled away by forces too strong to resist. During the Miller's Planet sequence, Zimmer layered a constant ticking sound beneath the music. That ticking, steady and relentless, reportedly represents approximately 1 Earth day passing with each tick. While the audience is watching Cooper and Brand struggle through knee-deep water and dodge massive waves, the ticking is quietly counting the days that are being lost back home. It is one of the most clever uses of sound in film scoring, because most people do not consciously notice it during the scene, but their bodies respond to it. The tension you feel during Miller's Planet does not just come from the waves or the flooding engines. It comes from that ticking. It comes from the feeling that something is being counted down. Something is being spent, and you cannot stop it. Zimmer turned time into sound and wove it into the fabric of the scene so seamlessly that you feel its presence without realizing it is there. The score for the docking sequence, when Cooper attempts the seemingly impossible spinning dock with the damaged endurance after man's death, was not even included on the original soundtrack album, but it might be the most thrilling piece of music Zimmer has ever composed. The organ builds from quiet ticking and percussive strikes into a full cyclical rhythm that escalates with each rotation of the Endurance. There is something ecstatic about it, something that sounds almost like a hymn. It is music that captures human bravery at its most extreme, a man doing the impossible, because giving up is not something he knows how to do. Zimmer spent 2 years creating the score for Interstellar. He isolated himself in his London apartment for a full month during the summer of 2013, working alone like a hermit, trying to find the right sound. The result is a score that does not just accompany the film. It is the film. Remove the music from Interstellar, and the movie still works as a story. But it loses its soul. It loses the thing that makes you cry during the video message scene, the thing that makes your heart pound during the docking sequence, the thing that makes you feel small and enormous at the same time when the Endurance passes through the wormhole. The organ is not just an instrument in this film. It is a character. It is the voice of everything the characters cannot say out loud. It is the sound of humanity reaching for something beyond itself and not knowing if it will find anything there. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. And that same energy, that same feeling of reaching into the unknown and refusing to let go, lives inside the poem that echoes through the entire film. A poem about death, about defiance, about raging against the end. But as we are about to see, the characters who speak those words the loudest are not always the ones who mean them the most. Section 10. Do not go gentle. The poem that means something different every time it's spoken. Dylan Thomas wrote his most famous poem in 1947 while visiting Florence, Italy with his family. It was written for his father, who was going blind and whose health was failing. The poem is a plea. It is a son standing at his father's bedside, begging him not to give up. Do not accept death quietly. Do not let it take you without a fight. Rage against it. Burn against it. Even if you know the darkness is coming, even if you know it will win in the end, do not go gently. Make it work for every second it takes from you. Thomas himself would die just 6 years later, at the age of 39 from pneumonia, following a night of heavy drinking. The man who wrote the most famous poem about fighting death did not live to see 40. Christopher Nolan chose this poem for Interstellar with great care. In an interview with NPR, Nolan explained what drew him to it. He said he was looking for something that would give the audience an immediate connection through poetic language, but with very clear meaning. The idea of the dying of the light felt essential to him, because the entire film was about the end of humanity's time on Earth. The light is dying, the crops are failing, the air is running out, and the characters in this story have a choice. They can accept the darkness, or they can rage against it. On the surface, the poem seems like a perfect match for the film's message of perseverance and defiance. And many viewers took it exactly that way. They heard Michael Caine reciting those words and felt inspired. They felt the poem was the film's battle cry, its statement of purpose, its call to arms. But Interstellar is doing something much more complicated with this poem than simply using it as motivation. The meaning of the poem shifts every single time it is spoken, depending on who is speaking it and what they are hiding. And by the end of the film, the poem has been completely turned on its head. The characters who recite it the most are not the heroes. They are the liars. Professor Brand is the character most associated with the poem. He recites it throughout the film, sometimes in full, sometimes just fragments, often as narration over images of the Endurance traveling through space. When you first hear him say those words, it feels powerful. Here is a wise old man, a brilliant scientist, sending brave people into the unknown and reminding them to fight, to push, to never surrender. The poem becomes the anthem of the mission. It becomes the sound of humanity refusing to die. But then you learn what Professor Brand has been hiding. He knows Plan A is impossible. He knows the gravity equation cannot be solved without data he considers unobtainable. He knows everyone on Earth is going to die, no matter what Cooper and the Endurance crew accomplish. He has accepted this. He made peace with it years ago. And yet he keeps reciting the poem. He keeps saying, "Do not go gentle into that good night." He keeps saying, "Rage against the dying of the light." And every time he says it, the words are hollow. They are performance. Brand is not raging against anything. He has already surrendered. He has looked at the dying of the light and decided there is nothing he can do about it except make sure Plan B goes forward, so that the species survives in some form on another planet. The poem in his mouth is not a battle cry. It is a lullaby. It is something he says to keep other people fighting a fight he has already given up on. When Brand finally confesses the truth to Murph on his deathbed, he recites the poem one last time, and in that moment, the words take on their cruelest meaning yet. He is dying. The light is going out. And he is going gently. He is going quietly, confessing his lie only when it no longer matters to him personally, leaving Murph to deal with the wreckage. The man who spent years telling everyone around him to rage against the dying of the light exits the story with barely a whisper. The poem, which was supposed to be about defiance, becomes a monument to his hypocrisy. The only other character in the film to reference the poem is Dr. Mann, and Mann's use of it is even more disturbing. After attempting to kill Cooper and learning that the Endurance crew has survived, Mann steals one of their ships and heads for the Endurance in orbit. As he flies toward it, preparing to take the ship and continue the mission alone, he recites the poem. "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light." In Mann's mind, this is what he is doing. He is raging. He is fighting. He is refusing to die on that frozen planet. He is taking action, seizing control, doing whatever it takes to survive and carry the mission forward. But the audience can see what Mann cannot. His rage is not noble. It is selfish. He is not fighting for humanity. He is fighting for himself. He has killed Romilly. He has tried to kill Cooper. He has lied about his planet. He has endangered the entire mission. And now he is reciting a poem about courage while running away from the consequences of his own cowardice. Mann has taken the same words that Thomas wrote for his dying father and twisted them into a justification for betrayal and murder. The poem in his mouth is not a plea for life. It is an excuse for destruction. And here is the detail that makes all of this even more pointed. Cooper never recites the poem, not once. The character who actually does rage against the dying of the light, the man who flies into a black hole to save his daughter, who refuses to give up no matter how many years he loses, who claws his way through a 5-dimensional structure to send a message across time, never once quotes Dylan Thomas. Cooper does not need the poem because he is living it. He does not need to tell himself to fight because fighting is what he does by nature. The characters who need to recite the poem are the ones who have already stopped believing in what it says. They use the words as a substitute for action. Cooper uses action as a substitute for words. This creates one of the most interesting readings of the poem's role in the film. There is a critical argument that says the poem is actually the rally cry of the villains, not the heroes. Both characters who speak it, Brand and Mann, are engaged in deception. Both are hiding the truth. Both have, in their own way, surrendered to the darkness they claim to be fighting. Brand has accepted that Earth's population will die. Mann has abandoned his integrity and his mission. They recite the poem not because they believe it, but because they need to believe it. The words are a mask, and behind the mask, Both men are going very gently indeed. There is even an interesting connection hidden in the language itself. The word villain and the word villanelle, which is the specific poetic form that Thomas used for this poem, share the same root. Both come from the Latin word villanus, which originally meant farmhand, and in a film that opens on a farm, where the hero is a farmer who refuses to accept that farming is all there is. That shared root feels like more than a coincidence. The poem's form and the film's antagonists are linked by a word that means the very thing Cooper is trying to escape. Thomas wrote this poem because he could not accept his father's death. He could not sit quietly and watch the light leave someone he loved. And that raw, desperate, deeply personal energy is what makes the poem so powerful on its own terms. But Interstellar takes that energy and asks a harder question. What happens when the people reciting the poem are not desperate? What happens when they are calculating? What happens when the rage is fake and the gentleness is real? The answer, according to the film, is that the words become dangerous. They become a tool for manipulation rather than a source of strength. They become a way to look brave while behaving like a coward. The real defiance in Interstellar does not come from poetry. It comes from a woman sitting at a desk in a NASA facility, staring at an equation she has been told is impossible, and refusing to stop working on it. It comes from Murph, the character who never recites the poem, who never makes speeches about raging against anything, who simply puts her head down and keeps solving the problem long after everyone else has given up. Murph does not rage against the dying of the light. She turns the light back on. And the film makes it very clear that her quiet, stubborn refusal to accept defeat is worth more than every dramatic recitation of every poem ever written. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The villains rage. The hero works. And in the end, it is not the raging that saves humanity. It is the work. It is the love. It is a woman picking up a watch from a bookshelf and noticing something that nobody else would have noticed because her father taught her to pay attention. And that woman, not the poet, not the professor, not the astronaut, is the one the film names as its true hero. Section 11, Cooper Station, named after the daughter, not the father. There is a moment near the end of Interstellar that is so quiet, you might miss it if you're not paying attention. Cooper wakes up in a hospital bed. He is groggy, disoriented, and has no idea where he is. A doctor is standing nearby. The room is clean and bright. Outside the window, something is wrong with the sky. It curves upward. There are houses and trees and fields above him, bending along the inside of what looks like an enormous cylinder. Cooper is on a space station, a massive rotating space station that simulates gravity by spinning, with an entire human settlement built along its inner walls. It is the fulfillment of Plan A. The gravity equation was solved. The stations were built. Humanity was evacuated from Earth. And this station, this new home orbiting Saturn near the wormhole, has a name. It is called Cooper Station. Cooper hears the name, and there is a flicker of something on his face. Not quite pride, something more complicated than that. He has been through the wormhole, through the black hole, through the tesseract, through time itself. He sacrificed everything. He lost decades with his children. He fell into the darkest place in the universe and somehow made it back. And now there is a space station with his name on it. For just a moment, it seems like recognition. It seems like the universe is finally giving him credit for what he did. And then the doctor chuckles. It is a small laugh, almost gentle, and he corrects Cooper. The station is not named after him. It is named after his daughter, Murphy Cooper, the woman who solved the gravity equation, the woman who figured out how to get humanity off the planet, the woman who received a message from her father through the ticking of a wristwatch and used it to save every person left on Earth. Cooper Station belongs to Murph. This is one of the most important moments in the entire film, and it works because of how understated it is. There is no dramatic speech. There is no ceremony. There is just a doctor, gently letting Cooper know that the world he woke up in was built by his daughter, not by him. And Cooper's reaction is not anger or disappointment. It is something closer to understanding. Because deep down, even if he did not fully realize it until this moment, Cooper has known the truth for a while. He glimpsed it inside the Tesseract. He said it himself in a moment of clarity, while surrounded by infinite versions of Murph's bedroom. He said they did not choose him. They chose her. The five-dimensional beings who built the wormhole and the Tesseract, the future humans who reached back through time to save their own species. They did not select Cooper because he was a brilliant pilot. They selected him because he was Murph's father. His role was to be the connection point. His role was to deliver the data. But the person who actually used that data, the person who turned raw numbers into salvation, was Murph. The journey that brought Murph to this point is one of the most compelling arcs in the film, and it runs parallel to Cooper's the entire time. While Cooper was flying through wormholes and landing on alien planets, Murph was growing up on a dying Earth, carrying the weight of her father's absence and the burning question of whether he was ever coming back. She grew from a 10-year-old girl who believed in ghosts into a brilliant physicist who worked alongside Professor Brand at NASA, dedicating her life to solving the gravity equation that would allow humanity to escape. She poured years into that work, years of calculations, years of hope, years of believing that her father's sacrifice meant something and that the equation had a solution waiting to be found. And then Professor Brand told her the truth on his deathbed. The equation was unsolvable. The data they needed was locked inside a black hole. Plan A had always been a lie. Everything Murph had been working on was built on a foundation of deception. The man she had trusted as a mentor, as almost a second father, had been using her. He had let her work on a problem he knew could not be solved, because her hope was useful to him. Her belief kept the project running. Her intelligence kept the staff motivated. And none of it mattered, because the answer was never coming. This is the moment where Murph could have become Professor Brand. She could have accepted the truth, given up, and quietly let humanity die while focusing on Plan B. She could have become Dr. Mann, turning her pain into selfishness, using the lie as an excuse to stop caring about anyone beyond herself. She had every reason to quit, every reason to be bitter, every reason to walk away from a problem that the smartest man she knew had declared impossible. But Murph did not quit. And this is where the film draws its sharpest line between her and everyone else who learned the truth about Plan A. When her partner Getty found out that Murph was keeping Brand's secret from the public, he accused her of being just like the professor. He said she was doing the same thing Brand had done, hiding the truth, letting people believe in something that was not real. And Murph's response is the single sentence that defines her entire character. She said that Brand gave up on them, but she was still trying to solve it. That is the difference. Brand knew the equation was impossible and stopped trying. Murph knew the equation was supposed to be impossible and kept going anyway. There is a philosophy behind Murph's refusal to stop that goes deeper than simple stubbornness. The film positions her as the counterpoint to every character who uses logic as an excuse for surrender. Professor Brand used logic to justify his lie. He calculated that the equation could not be solved, and he used that calculation as permission to give up. Dr. Mann used logic to justify his betrayal. He calculated that his survival instinct was more powerful than his morality, and he used that calculation as permission to kill. Both men were intelligent, both men were rational, and both men were wrong. Not because their math was bad, but because they assumed their math was the final word. They treated the limits of their own understanding as the limits of reality. Murph does not make that mistake. Murph understands that the fact that something has not been done does not mean it cannot be done. She understands that the boundaries of what we think is possible are not the same as the boundaries of what actually is possible. And she keeps working because she believes that the answer is out there, even if she cannot see it yet. And she is right. The answer does come. It comes from her father, encoded in the ticking of a watch on a bookshelf in her childhood bedroom. Cooper, from inside the Tesseract, manipulates gravity to move the second hand of that watch in a pattern that contains the quantum data from inside the black hole. The data that Brand said was unobtainable. The data that was supposed to be locked away forever behind an event horizon that nothing could escape from. It arrives through the one channel that the universe would allow, through gravity, through time, through the bond between a father and his daughter. And Murph receives it because she is the only person in the world who would have noticed. She is the only person who would have gone back to that room, picked up that watch, looked at the second hand, and thought to write down the pattern instead of dismissing it as a malfunction. Cooper taught Murph to pay attention when she was 10 years old. He told her that when something strange happens, you do not look away. You observe it, you gather data, you figure it out. And 20 years later, that lesson saves the human race. The thing Cooper gave Murph was not just a watch. It was a way of thinking. It was a refusal to accept that the unexplained is the same as the unexplainable. And Murph took that gift and carried it with her through decades of pain, decades of anger, decades of missing her father, and she never put it down. Cooper Station is named after Murphy Cooper because Murphy Cooper earned it, not by flying through a wormhole, not by surviving a black hole, not by floating through a structure that turned time into something you could touch. Those things were extraordinary, and Cooper deserves credit for them. But the station is not named after the man who delivered the message. It is named after the woman who understood it. It is named after the woman who took an impossible equation, a dead mentor's lie, a father's absence, and the ticking of a wristwatch, and turned all of it into a future for the entire human race. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The film has been building to this revelation from its very first scene. Murph was always the hero. Cooper's journey was essential, but it was in service of hers. He crossed the universe so that she could save it. And when he finally gets to see her again, the woman waiting for him is not the 10-year-old girl who screamed for him not to leave. She is an old woman, lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and the evidence of a life fully lived. And what she says to him in that room is going to be the last lesson Interstellar has to teach. Section 12. What Interstellar teaches about time and love. Cooper walks into a hospital room on Cooper Station and finds Murph. But the Murph he finds is not the woman he imagined reuniting with for all those years. She is old. She is lying in a bed, surrounded by machines, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. An entire family that Cooper has never met. An entire life that he was not part of. Murph has lived a full, complete, extraordinary life. She raised children. She grew old. She watched the world she saved take its first steps into a future she built. And Cooper missed all of it. He is standing in her room, looking almost exactly the same as the day he left. He has barely aged. She has lived an entire lifetime, and the distance between them, a distance measured not in miles but in years, is the most heartbreaking thing the film has left to show us. When Cooper sits beside her bed, the emotion on his face is not joy. It is not relief. It is grief. He is grieving the years he did not get. He is grieving the version of Murph he never knew, the teenager, the young woman, the mother, the grandmother. He is grieving a relationship that was stolen from him, not by villains or by bad luck, but by the simple, merciless movement of time. He saved the human race, and it cost him his daughter's entire life. Not her existence, her life. The day-to-day moments, the birthdays, the conversations over breakfast, the phone calls about nothing, the slow, beautiful, ordinary accumulation of shared time. That is what a relationship actually is. Cooper got the mission, Murph got the life, and neither of them got each other. Murph sees him, she recognizes him, and the first thing she does is something that only a parent would understand. She does not ask him to stay. She does not beg for more time. She does not cling to him the way she did when she was 10 years old, screaming at his truck to stop, refusing to let him go. Instead, she tells him to leave. She says that no parent should have to watch their child die. She tells Cooper to go. Go find Brand on Edmund's planet. Go live whatever life he has left. Because Murph understands something that the film has been teaching us for 3 hours. Time is not about how much of it you have. It is about what you do with the moments you are given. And the moments that Murph and Cooper were given were enough. Not enough in the way either of them wanted. Not enough to fill a lifetime, but enough to save the world. This scene is devastating because it is true. Not true in the sense that wormholes and tesseracts are true. True in the sense that every single person watching this film knows what it feels like to lose time with someone they love. You do not need to fall into a black hole to understand what Cooper is feeling in that room. You just need to have ever looked at a parent who is older than you remembered and realized that the years went by without you noticing. You just need to have ever missed a holiday or a birthday or a phone call and understood that you cannot get that moment back. You just need to have ever sat beside someone you love and wished you had more time, knowing that wishing does not change anything. Christopher Nolan has talked about what drove him to make this film. He has said that the more he and his brother Jonathan worked on the story, the more it became about what it means to be a father, a parent, a child. It became about the connections between us, or, as he put it, what it means to be human, really. The black holes and the wormholes and the distant planets are spectacular. They are awe-inspiring. They are some of the most visually stunning images ever committed to film. But they are the frame. They are not the painting. The painting is Cooper and Murph. The painting is a father who promised he would come back, and a daughter who never stopped believing him, even when she was furious, even when she thought he had lied, even when decades passed, and the rational thing to do would have been to let go. And that is what Interstellar ultimately teaches about time. Time is not the numbers on a clock. It is not the ticking in Hans Zimmer's score. It is not the equations on a chalkboard or the spin of a black hole. Time is the space between the people you love. It is the distance that grows when you are not paying attention. It is the thing that turns a 10-year-old girl into an old woman while her father is away for what feels like a few hours. Time does not care about your plans. It does not care about your promises. It does not wait for you to be ready. It moves forward, always forward, and it takes everything with it. The people you love get older. The moments you meant to have slip away. And one day you look up and realize that the life you were going to live has already been lived by someone else, while you were somewhere else, doing something you thought was more important. The 23 years Cooper lost on Miller's planet are just an extreme version of something every person experiences. Every parent who works long hours and misses their child's school play knows what time dilation feels like. Every person who moves to a new city and does not call their family for months knows what it feels like to look up and realize that time has passed and you cannot get it back. The physics in Interstellar are extraordinary, but the feeling is ordinary. It is the most human feeling there is, and that is why the film hits so hard. It is not asking you to understand Einstein. It is asking you to understand yourself. And what the film teaches about love is inseparable from what it teaches about time. Love, in Interstellar, is not a greeting card. It is not a warm feeling in your chest. It is the force that fights time. It is the thing that reaches across the gap that time creates between people and refuses to let that gap become permanent. Cooper's love for Murph did not stop because he was in another galaxy. Murph's love for Cooper did not stop because he was gone for decades. Their bond survived distance, survived anger, survived betrayal, survived the literal bending of space and time around a black hole. And in the end, that bond was not just emotionally important. It was physically important. It was the mechanism through which the data traveled. It was the compass that guided Cooper through the Tesseract. It was the reason Murph picked up the watch. Love was not a side effect of the story. It was the engine. The film began with a world that had stopped looking up, a world that had rewritten its textbooks and told its children that the greatest things humanity ever accomplished were lies, a world that had decided survival was enough, and that reaching for something more was wasteful and dangerous. And then one man followed a set of coordinates written in dust on a bedroom floor, and everything changed. He flew through a wormhole. He lost 23 years on an ocean planet. He watched a good man turn into a monster on a frozen world. He fell into a black hole and found his daughter's bedroom waiting for him on the other side. And his daughter, working on the ground with nothing but her mind and her refusal to quit, turned an impossible equation into the key that unlocked humanity's future. Interstellar argues that love is not the opposite of science. It is not the enemy of reason. It is the thing that gives science its purpose. Without love, the equations are just numbers. Without love, the mission is just logistics. Without love, saving the species is an abstract concept with no emotional weight. But with love, every calculation matters because someone is waiting on the other side of it. Every sacrifice matters because it is being made for a specific person with a specific name and a specific face. Cooper did not fall into a black hole to save humanity. He fell into a black hole to get back to Murph, and Murph did not solve the gravity equation to save the world. She solved it because her father sent her a message through a watch. And that message meant he was still out there, still trying, still keeping his promise. Time takes everything. Love is the only thing that fights back. That is what Interstellar is about. Not wormholes, not black holes, not the fifth dimension. It is about the simple, stubborn, irrational refusal to let go of the people who matter to you, no matter how much distance the universe puts between you. It is about looking up. Not because the stars are beautiful, but because somewhere out there, on the other side of all that darkness, someone you love is looking back. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.